Well, hi everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today again for another episode of Driven with David Mullum. Of course, that's me, your host. The original idea around this vodcast was for the people who are in some way connected to USANA, the USANA company, whether it's consumers or independent salespeople, brand sharers, the many global elite and Olympic athletes that are connected to the company, and for the thousands of people who work within the organization across so many countries. This was really an opportunity for us to introduce them to a number of our new board members. But of course, as the research, as we're building the research and preparation around this podcast, and as we were preparing for it, the kind of conversations that we're formulating with this group, with these people, quickly identified the incredible scope of knowledge and diversity that this group of amazing, talented industry people have to offer anyone in any area of business today. And so we took this series originally under the USANA umbrella, and here we are today sharing it across multiple platforms, multiple countries in a number of languages. And today I have the real honor to introduce to you a very special gentleman. John T. Fleming's career has spanned across 50 years, across our industry and many other areas of entrepreneurship and other endeavors. John is an architect by education, but by practice, I think I would best describe as a researcher, a strategist, and above all, a futurist. And so it's a great pleasure to welcome you here today, John, all the way from Dallas, Texas.
Thank you, David, and hello to everyone out there that you happen to be speaking to. And I'm just honored to be in your presence, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of your show. Over the past 2 days, 3 days, we've gotten to know each other, so it's my pleasure. Good to be here, and hello to everyone out there in the world.
And you began your career working in the office of Mies van der Rohe. I believe I pronounced that correctly. I've been practicing that.
Mies van der Rohe.
Well, I'm not even close, but thank you. But the German architect, recognized really as one of the masters of modern architecture, and you began your career there. Then moved into the direct selling arena as an entrepreneur, to an officer in one of the largest and most notable direct selling companies, Avon. And then you're a publisher and editor of a trade publication. The founder of Ideas and Design Group. You're a business consultant, a speaker, a writer, a student, a researcher, advocate of micro-enterprise, and now author of Ultimate Gig. My goodness, you fit a lot in. And we're going to spend a good amount of time really talking about the gig economy and the progression since you wrote the book. But the thing that stands out for me is your tireless energy for the future. And so can you spend a minute talking about the early days of architecture and its influence on you to become the person that you are today?
Yeah, it really started in my pursuit of architecture. And when it was time to go and study the field, go off to college university, I selected the school that had been founded by Mies van der Rohe. Now, for all of the audience, contemporary scholars tend to recognize three masters of contemporary architecture. One would be Frank Lloyd Wright, the American architect, Le Corbusier, the French architect, and Mies van der Rohe, the German architect. So I feel to be very fortunate to have not only gone to a school that was based on the philosophy of Mies van der Rohe, but to also be able to work in his office and to be associated with the people who were of that contemporary philosophy. And that's when I learned concepts such as less is more, that simplicity can be a strategy, that we can design buildings that are functional without coming back, putting a lot of ornamentation on the building. So it was a different concept. And it basically helped me to form a philosophy about life and business and everything else I have been involved in. And today I talk a lot about reducing complexity to simplicity. It comes from Mises' philosophy of less can be more. And I find that to be true today. So I always attempted to latch on to a few principles that would be transferable and foundational to my beliefs, or what we just talked about. We can choose to be good at pretty much anything we choose to stay committed to. So that's a little background on that. And what I learned in the early days of architecture are applied today as life principles and business principles, and of course, foundational to all the research and writing that I do. So when it comes to writing about something that you have researched, it's important to understand that the reader will expect you to get to the point and make it clear enough for them to understand and eventually gain benefit.
Thank you. There's the interesting I read somewhere in one of your interviews, I'm just quoting from that interview, was I learned how to design a building before I learned how to design a life. And I thought that was a really interesting, and then you go on to talk about a transition. Do you just want to spend a minute on that?
Yeah, it was what I call a defining moment in my life. And it came as a result of doing the things that I was taught to do to become successful. This has probably shifted a bit, but again, it goes back to my parents, the household. And it was go to school, study hard, get as much education as possible, get a good job, get married. So that's kind of like those were the rules that I lived under. And in architectural school, I realized the significance of many of the engineering courses in particular that were designed to help us understand. And I use this in an example that I think we talked about previously. There was a course called Strength of Materials. So you're understanding how to calculate the strength of steel and iron and the mixture between concrete and steel, et cetera, et cetera. And as I embraced those courses and struggled through many, I realized that I was learning more about how you actually design a building to withstand time. And that's why structures, many structures built long ago, over 2,000 years ago, are still standing. But I realized personally that I didn't have those same principles being applied to my life. So I had learned, or I was learning to design a building, and I wasn't quite sure that I had learned to design a life. So
Yeah.
I attempted to apply some of those basic fundamentals to planning and strategy.
Obviously, there's been people that have helped shape your perspective and life's mission. And so I'm interested to hear about who they might be and any favorite stories or quotes about those people.
Yeah, there are many. And I'm sitting in my office, and in the background, you see a portion of a bookcase. All of these are my friends, the people who wrote these books. And over the years, I have just found so much value in mentors, in coaches. And it dawned on me many years ago that I would not get the opportunity to personally have enough mentors and coaches who really would be able to dedicate their time to helping me become a better person, to helping me become better at whatever it was that I was doing. And I was reminded that I should adopt reading. And for me, in the early days, it was always books. Today, it could be accessing a digital platform, a podcast such as this. You call it a podcast. So we have so many different ways to access information today. But for me, it started with books. So I don't like to name names because it's difficult for me to put a value on who has meant the most to me. I have been fortunate. I have met many good people along my life journey. But all of these people behind me who wrote these books are my friends and my mentors. And I often go to any one of these books just to read how they thought at that particular moment in time. I am reminded of their insights that stimulate my insights. So I'm provoked all the time to think differently, to understand the great diversity of thought in the world. And books help me do it today. I love podcasts. I love the video platforms that we can access. We can listen to someone at any time, be it 8 in the morning or 1 a.m. at night. So we're not limited. And that's the way I look at it. So my mentors are many. I'm grateful. And all of these great people behind me and in other places in my home have helped to shape my ability to think, to solve problems, to be patient about the learning process, to never ever give up.
You talked about making sure that part of the process of learning is also seeking out the right material and making
Yes,
sure that we're focused on that.
yeah.
And I wanted to talk about a really wonderful piece of material, which is The Ultimate Gig, which is sitting behind you. And this is an incredible read. And the first thing that you notice when you read through this book is the incredible amount of references. You researched and collected the data and the information and the precision in which you and your team established the thesis in which you're presenting. So you're definitely a great believer in research, and you talk about that earlier. I mean, at the time this book was being created, this was pretty much pre-COVID. But even then, there was a real shift occurring in the way that people wanted to interface with brands, wanted to interface with commerce, digitization, the Amazonification of the world, and so on. And so I'm interested to start just in discussing about The Ultimate Gig, what led you to write the book, and what were the greatest learnings for you and your team?
Yeah, thanks, David. And now you force me to kind of think back to what I have been doing for the last 4 years, which is always great. But about 4 years ago, I started to observe, and I think at that time I was also looking for what is going to energize me and keep me thinking outside of my box. And I've always been a passionate advocate, as you know, about the direct selling model. And that's where I spent most of my life. I had a great time at Avon, part of a great team there, learned so much in that company. And in recent years, I started to notice the shift that was taking place in how people are thinking, how people in the marketplace are accessing products and services. And then as I rode around and as I visited different cities, anytime I could, I would take the opportunity to just go visit the closest shopping mall. And I noticed the closures, and I noticed that the activity seemed to be waning a bit. And then, of course, here comes Amazon, here come digital platforms, and here comes a new way of being able to access products and services that did not require me to jump in a car or spend a lot of time. And I realized that I love the convenience. And I'm also an advocate of our model, and I wanted to better understand what are the forces that will be impacting the model, and how will we innovate and take advantage of the shift in marketplace. So that activated fuel within, it energized me. And the first commitment I made was to study and read and get outside of my box and to better understand what was going on. There's a book that I'll mention simply because it's available all over the world now, I think. But Peter Diamandis, one of my favorite authors, who I will name of the many that are behind me, wrote a book, The Future is Faster Than We Think. And that book was recommended to me, and I got into that book and I went, wow, this is incredible, because sometimes we can uh, drop away from the optimistic view. And in challenging times, I think we always have to keep the optimistic view.
Yeah, I mean, I love the definition in the book. At its essence, the gig economy is a channel mechanism for reducing complexity, in that digital platforms increasingly simplify linking gig workers and their customers, whether organizations or consumers. As such, these digital platforms are mediating vehicles that serve a market matching function. And so, can you just expand on that just a little bit for us?
The gig economy really brought our attention to the value of a digital platform. Now, the digital platform makes it easy for consumers to access information and even a product or a service. Uh, the master at that, probably Amazon. Then when it comes to services that engage consumers with a provider of a service, most people think of gig economy as being transportation gigs. Transportation gigs are just one subset of this broad gig economy. But you take a transportation gig, and I'll mention that one because they disrupted in this country what had been what we call the taxi cab industry, the limousine industry, uh, et cetera. And what happened there is that the transportation gig providers, who were really specialists in technology, created a platform that connects a product or a service with a consumer who desires that product or service. And the intermediary is the person who will end up providing that service to the consumer. So the consumer goes on a digital platform and requests a service such as a ride, and the gig provider provides the consumer with the information as to who is going to deliver the service. And all of a sudden, we can see who it is, we can see how far away they are, and exactly what time they are going to arrive to pick us up. Uh, that is a good example of the value of digital platforms and how people become intermediaries in connecting consumers and clients with the product or service.
And of course, the ultimate gig environment has rapidly evolved with COVID. And so, since putting the book out and then going through the last couple of years of the pandemic, I'm interested to hear what you've seen as the biggest shift. What's the biggest shift that you've seen and you see occurring post-COVID?
Well, one thing that I see and we deeply believe, and when I say we, the people who've been close to me that I stay in contact with, that give me the benefit of their insightful thinking. I don't think we ever go back to what we might call normal. I think that there's a new normal. I think that technology has been the great game changer. And through technology, all businesses are able to better serve consumers. I see people as still being a part of the equation, but I don't see us ever losing the value of flexibility and freedom and how more people can get work done. There's a great attribute to being able to engage in a form of work that I can do at 8 o'clock in the morning if I choose, or 12 o'clock in the day, or 4 o'clock in the afternoon or evening, or maybe even at 12 o'clock at night after the kids go to bed. Now, that's what we are seeing more businesses engage in. I'm going to also say that it's one of the big opportunities in front of us as direct sellers as we continue to innovate and plan to be more effective, more relevant, more sustainable, marching into the future. So I don't see that going away. And David, I think that you may have seen this stat in your country, but here in the United States of America, the US Bureau of Labor Statistics announced a few weeks ago that the traditional job quit rate was up in all industries across all regions and happens to be at the highest point in the history of the United States of America. Now, you can look at that stat a couple of different ways. One could say, wow, that's really hurting our economy, and we all understand that. People are quitting their jobs. But then the other way to look at it is that people are not necessarily quitting work, they're looking for options that present more flexibility and freedom in how they get the work done. And now we are at this great moment in time where the options are more plentiful than ever before. So very exciting times. And that's what I see moving forward. So we saw that as we went into the research and writing of the book. I think it has intensified with COVID-19, and we are beginning to see some of the aftermath of the tremendous power in giving people flexibility and freedom in how they get work done.
Yeah, I mean that trend is. I was just reading this morning, and there's been a series of articles coming out, and I read the statistics coming out as high as 55% of the workforce has either changed jobs in the US in the past 6 months or plan to change in the next 6 months. And again, the same trends are occurring across Australia and around the world. And it's interesting that it used to be a seller's market pre-digitization, and it shifted around to becoming a consumer market. Consumers have more options, they have more information. Equally for employees, it's now shifting into being an employees market where coming out of COVID, it seems like there are more options. There's the demand for more flexibility is just commonplace now, and so I think it's certainly the next 6 to 12 months are going to be very interesting in that space. And equally, one of the things that you and I have talked about, that with digitization of business, just interested in the way that consumers interface with the brand, how this has changed the value proposition of a human being in that interaction. In the old days, again, we'd see someone going out and selling something, or they'd be a purveyor of goods. But now it's turned around the other way, where the consumer is directly connecting to the brand. Do you see that there's, particularly in the micro enterprise mix and space, how is that dynamic changing? Is it a positive or is it a negative?
I think it's a positive because I tend to think that way, or I look for the positive because that is a thought process. And I think that we have to be very careful about what we listen to, and that we only listen one way, and we could very easily jump to positive or negative sometimes too quickly. When I think about my journey through direct selling, and you kind of dated me in the beginning, thank you.
My pleasure.
And I can remember many years ago when the internet became or was becoming very popular, that there were some people that felt that the internet is going to put personalization out of business, that those of us who were involved in personal selling in any form would find it difficult because the internet makes it too easy for the customer to access information. I don't feel that way. I personally look at the positive side of this, and I think the value of the human component is becoming more valuable than ever before. And here's how I'm going to reflect on that. I remember when Joyce and I first got involved in direct selling, and we did a lot of home parties, and we did events, and we gathered people in groups, and we spent a lot of time in preparation. And then we would invite sometimes 20, 25 people, and we would hope that 10 would show up.
Yep.
And we would go and do the party or show, and of course, meet a lot of great people. And that was the beginning of building a personal relationship. So that's really how we got started with our affiliation with this direct selling model, and became quite successful at it by standards of that time. When I look at the time that went into the preparation, I have to also think about the gas and the many hours that were unproductive. Now we're going to fast forward to this digital economy, and companies that are providing products and services provide them now through a digital platform. And companies that allow people to become intermediaries or brand ambassadors enable those people to utilize the digital platform through what we often refer to as a replicated website or whatever the terminology might be. So when I think about today's world, yes, the digital platform makes it much easier for the consumer to access information, and I applaud that. It also makes it easier for the intermediary or the seller or the brand ambassador to share the information with others, because now I don't have to be the messenger as much as I had to be in the past. I need to let people know here's where you go to take a look at what we offer as a brand. But let me tell you my story. Let me tell you why I'm involved. Let me tell you why I love these products. Let me tell you why I love this service. Let me tell you why I'm investing a little bit of my time and just sharing with others what someone shared with me. I think that that's so powerful. And when the human being, collaborates with the digital platform and uses it effectively, now, if I were doing what Joyce and I did many, many years ago, I don't have to deal with the constraint of travel or being face to face. I look at the positive and I go, wow, we could have 10 people on this Zoom call, or we could have 20 people on this Zoom call, or I could have 10 people on my own Zoom call, or 20 people, and they don't have to be in the same place. They can be in different locations, different time zones, and I could tell them about what I love, what I'm doing, and why they should go to the digital platform to get more information, because the only thing I can really talk about is my love.
Yeah, yeah, that's
So
great.
it's a powerful new moment in time. Um,
Yeah,
but
I had a really fun experience the other night where a little country town of Canamble, you wouldn't know this, out in New South Wales, in Australia, and they were doing a trivia fundraiser. And so usually, in the pre-digitized days, that'd be done in the local hall, and you had to
yes,
be in town to do it. And here was a guy running the trivia night from Melbourne. It was an incredible experience. He did a great job, and people all over the state that were participating in it, and it was a really fun, a bit of a raucous night. I won't mention any of the names, but it was a really great experience. And so that whole ability to humanize the digitized environment, it just brought so many pieces together. Just sitting there watching what was happening in an arena that normally you'd have to gather in person to do. So absolutely hear what you're saying. So we're running towards the end of our time together, John, and I wanted to. I always like to get some answers as a parent of 6 children and 2 grandchildren. My kids are aged from 18 to 38. They're either studying, they're employed, they're running their own micro enterprise, or all of the above. What advice do you have for them? I need some help here. Thanks, John. What advice do you have for them as they navigate through what's a really complex and I wouldn't say it's a fast-paced world, but it's just there's so much. It's complex. It's a cluttered space, and so I'm looking for some advice for the 18 to 38-year-old group.
yeah, David, I'm going to be very careful because I want to stay in the safe zone. and, And my kids kind of cautioned me about giving advice. So I'm not going to share this as advice. I'm just going to share some thoughts that I would pass on to anyone. First of all, let's cherish the moment and realize that the possibilities have never been greater. When we think back to the many years that we've been involved in any form of business, we are enjoying a special moment and a special possibility. You're sitting there in Australia. I'm sitting here in Dallas, Texas, and it's almost as if we are talking to one another. So cherish the moment. And secondly, this is just a thought. Always be a student and always be curious and seek the thoughts of others because they always enhance our own personal thoughts. And you go back to some of the conversation about books and the value of accessing information. A wise person told me many years ago when I was advised to read more, that if you read one book a year, that's one book a year. If you read one book a month, that's 12 books a year. If you read something from a good book every week, that's 52 books a year, whereas you're feeding the most precious asset that we have, our mind. And if you read something from a good book every day, you'll probably be better off. So I would just say that we have so many ways to access information and gosh, be curious, be in pursuit of what others are thinking about, that are participating and always trying to make sure that the future is going to be bigger, brighter, more sustainable, more enjoyable than ever before. So no advice, just thoughts. My kids might watch this, so I don't want them calling me saying, "Dad, we told you stop giving advice."
Well, it's been an absolute joy to spend time with you, John, and getting to, as we've been talking over the last few weeks about getting together and the opportunity to meet with you and just the depth of knowledge, your experiences, and the opportunity for us to share some of those with a big group of people today has just been an absolute pleasure, and really appreciate your time, appreciate your leadership in the communities. You know, we have a relationship because of the company that I'm involved in with USANA. But of course, you impact tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people as an author and as a speaker and someone who's really all about helping create a better outcome for people, and just really appreciate everything that you're doing in the space that I'm involved in, but particularly for everyone out there. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for everything that you do, and looking forward to being able to chat again sometime in the future, mate.
David, let me just take 1 second and say I'm so delighted to be a part of this family, and that's the USANA family. And it's such a privilege to get to know people like you on this team.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
All right. Be good. Cheers. So there we go. What a wonderful time to spend with John, and looking forward to the next episode of Driven, where we're going to bring another exceptional individual to share a very big story with you. And so I look forward to catching up with you really soon. Cheers.